Hello developers, how are you all guys doing? In the previous video, we have looked at how to integrate Socket.io and FastAPI, and as promised, I am back with another video, and in this I'm going to show you how to connect a React client with the server built in the last video. By the way, if you have missed it, go ahead and check that out from the info cards right here. Let's get started guys. Back to Visual Studio Code. This is the project that we have built in the previous video in the server folder, and this is our main app folder. In that, I'm going to create a React app called client, and while that is creating, let me go into the server and activate my ppnv shell and keep it ready for running the server. Okay, now that we have it installed, let me just clear the console and cd into the client, and let me close these server files and go into the client. And in source we have a bunch of React generated files which we don't need. Let me just quickly clean up that. Okay, so I'm just gonna quickly run npm start and see our React app in action. Yes, we have a couple of errors. That is because we don't have these files, as we have deleted those. Let me remove all the code that they have provided by default, and let me put a hello world. Let's save. Still we have a couple of errors. Let me remove these imports as well, which we don't need. There we have it. So I'm just gonna comment the React strict mode because I don't like my components rendered twice every time, so I'm just commenting that. And here what I'm gonna build is the app. So the app is just gonna have a title which is just going to say Socket.io app or a Socket.io chat app, something like that. And then I'm just gonna have a status here. So it's gonna say the status, whether it is actually connected to the server or not. And then we are going to have the actual chat itself. So we will be having a messages list here in the body, and we will also have an input field and a send button there so that we can send the messages. So let me just start by wrapping everything inside a fragment, React fragment. So I'm going to have an h1 tag. In that I'm going to say socket.io app. So we have that heading nice and clear, and then I'm going to put everything else inside a component called chat, which I will be building now. So let me create a new file, chat.js, and in that I'm going to say export const chat, which will just return a p tag for now, just for showing you guys what will be happening there. So I should quickly import that in the app. Import chat from chat. Yes, so there we have it. So we have our title and then we have our chat. So as I've said, we need to have a status component here. So the status will be showing us the connection status. So if the app is connected with the server, we want it to be showing connected, and if it's not, it should be showing disconnected. So let me quickly add that as well. So I'm going to wrap everything into a React fragment, and in that I'm going to have an h2 tag. Inside the h2 tag I'm going to have a status which will be static for now, And then below the h2 tag, I'm going to have my chat, the actual chat, which will be a div. I'll be adding the styles for the div. So these are a few styles that I felt are good to look at. So instead of having just a blank page, so I just have a border here and a height of 500 pixel, and whenever there are more number of messages, it will automatically scroll. In that div, I'm going to have message elements. These components are just messages that I'll be displaying. I should also be building that component. So let me just create a new file quickly and export const message. Okay, and let me import that here. Okay, so I have messages, and if I copy paste a bunch of messages here, as you can see, they are not appearing in a column manner. That's because I don't have a div wrapped around them. So let me just wrap them inside a div. So each message is in its own row, and if I just copy paste them again, and we just have a scroll effect going on. So let me just undo everything and just have a single message for now. Let's go ahead and install the Socket.io client library. So let me just stop the application and say npm install Socket.io client. So now it is installed, and let me just start. And in the server side, I also want to make quick change, which is adding the CORS middleware. We will be connecting from the front end to the back end. You can see that our React application is running at 3000 port, and the server FastAPI server will be running at 8000 port. So in order for FastAPI to allow the connection, we just have to add an app.add middleware, which will be CORS middleware. Let me just import that first from FastAPI.middleware.CORS. Import CORS middleware. So once I import that and give it a bunch of options, so once I have added the origins to be allowed, I want to change that to a star so that it will allow every origin to be connected with the server. If you just want to allow your own origin, just make it http://localhost 3000, but I'm just leaving it to star so that it will be easy for me. And we are allowing all methods and all headers and also credentials. So now our FastAPI is ready to be connected with the client. Let me close that and also run the backend. So now that is running, and also our front end is running. So let's go ahead and try to import the Socket.io library. Import IO from the Socket.io -client. So this is the actual function that we will be using to create our Socket.io client, and I'm going to have a couple of state variables. So before that, I need to import the React and also useState. So once I have imported useState, let me have a const called isConnected and its setter useState, which will be false for now, because when the application is initialized, it will have a disconnected status. So I'm just gonna set it to false. And from the IO that we have import from socket IO client, I want to create a socket which is going to be const socket is equal to IO of. So this is the actual function that we will be using to create the socket, as I've said. And if you see, it will take a host URL. So this will be the actual URL of our backend server. So it will be http localhost 3000. And remember that the backend's socket.io server is running at a path called sockets. So you should also pass that into the options here, like this path is equals to sockets. So I also need to include a slash. So that's how you create a socket. And to make things cleaner, I'm going to move these into an environment file, which will be sitting in the client folder .env. I'm just creating an .env file, and I'm going to put a bunch of variables here. So this is our backend URL, API URL, and this is the socket path. And this just specifies the create React app to not open a new browser window whenever I run npm start. So it just saves me a few seconds in closing the newly opened browser windows, which I don't need. Once I have the variables there, I'm going to change the variables to process.env. Let me just do that. So I'm going to replace everything with the process.env.react app URL. So like that. So now we have the socket ready. The socket also has a property called connected. So we can use that to get the status of the socket. So if the socket is all good and connected, it will be showing as connected. It will be set to true. And if it's not, there is some issue, then it will just be false. So you can use that to set the status. So as we have the is connected, I can go and change the status to a dynamic value here instead of having a static one. So if is connected, I'm going to use a ternary operator here. It is actually not connected. It is connected. So once we have it, and you can see that it is disconnected. And why is it disconnected? Let's see the backend. Okay, it is getting some requests, but why is it disconnected? That is because I'm not updating the state yet. So let me go ahead and do that. So the socket.io documentation recommends that we have a use effect, which will be having a function like always, and a dependency array which will be empty, so that this use effect will be run on mount. I'm just copy pasting a couple of lines to save some time. So we just have the socket.onConnect event. So whenever the socket is actually connected with the backend, we are setting the is connected to socket.connected, and whenever it is disconnected, also I'm going to do the same instead of setting it to false. So now if you look at the application, it should say connected. Yep. So whenever we are connected, it's updating the state and setting the is connected variable, and also doing the same when it is disconnected. So now that our front end is connected with the backend, I need a way to know whoever is joining the chat. So if I join from another tab, I should be able to see that I have joined the chat. So I want some kind of a message to be displayed here that hey, this particular user has joined. So of course we don't have any usernames, but I'm going to use the SID remember that we have discussed about the SID when we were building the backend, right? So this SID will be our user ID. So I'm going to use this as the unique identifier. First, I'm going to say join. So whenever a person is joined, we will be getting a join event. So socket.on join event, I'm going to get the data, which I will show you how we will be getting the data. That's the backend part. We will write that in a minute. So once we get the data on the join event, what I'm going to say is I'm going to have a list of messages. So let me just have that in the state variable, const messages list, and set messages, which will be empty for now. So whenever I get a join event, I'm going to append a new message into the messages list that we already have. So I'm going to call the set messages function and pass it a function, so that it will be calling that function every time a join event comes. So this set messages will be getting the previous messages list. So let me call that previous messages. So once we get that previous messages, I'm going to use the JavaScript spread operator and spread the previous messages list and add the new element at the end. So this should not be a curly braces, this should be a list. So let's make that into square brackets, and let me add a new object, which will be our message object, and the message object will have all the data that we get in the data, and also the message type, and also the type, which will be join, because the message is from a join event. So there you have it. So once someone joins, we will be creating a new message and then just pushing that into the at the end of the previous messages, so that our messages array will be populated with the join message. So how to display the messages on the chat? So for that, it's simple. I'm just going to iterate through the messages list that I have. Let me remove the message component for now, and I'm going to iterate through the messages here in JavaScript. Messages dot map. I'm going to say I'll get a message and the index of the message, or the ID if you would like to call that. So I'm just going to call it an index, and I'll be returning, actually not curly braces, let me just make it a direct return here. So I'll be just returning the message component with a few props. So the prop is going to be the message itself. So the message will be message, and the key, because we should pass a unique value for each component while iterating. So I'm just going to pass the index here, just to avoid that warning there. So as you can see, it gives me an error because we don't have the just a second, I'm missing a few commas here, just that, and yeah, this should be a small m. Okay, now you see nothing because like we don't have the props in the actual message component. So let's build that props. So let me just paste what I have written here just to save some time. So if the message type is join message, I want it to return a p tag which just has the SID. So in the message, remember, we have the data and also the type. So with the type, I'm checking whether the type is of join, and if it is join, then I'm just saying that, hey, this particular SID user has joined. So let's see that in action. We don't see any messages populating here. That's obvious because we did not do anything in the server side. So how would the backend get a join message, right? So let me go to the sockets.py and actually have an emit here. So whenever someone has joined, which means someone has newly connected from a new device, I'm going to say print this, and then I'm also going to say ask the server to emit an event to the join event, and the data will be a dictionary, of course, and it will contain the SID. So the front end will just get this from the socket.io. So this event will be sent to all the connected clients, and this is an asynchronous method, so I just need to await that. So once I write that and save, you can see that it is disconnected and it's connected, which means it has reloaded, and you can see that we have joined. What if I do the same thing from another tab? We should see a new message that this client has connected, right? So let me just go and reload. You can see that this particular client is having the SID this, and this particular tab has joined, and then you can see the same SID here as well, so that we have two joined clients. Now let me go and build the actual messaging functionality. So in the same way that I have a connect event, I also want to have a chat event. So let me just say socket.io server dot event sync define chat, and the chat is also gonna get an SID and the message. So the text message that you type in and click on send, so that message will be coming to the message argument, right? So I'm going to say await socket.io server dot emit. So whenever someone sends a message, the server is going to get that message and emit it to all the connected clients. So we are going to emit to the chat, and the data will be a dictionary, of course, again, and you should pass the SID, who has emitted it, and then the message, the actual message. So now that we have the backend done, let me close the sockets.py and go and take a look at the messages component. Actually, I'm going to look at the chat component and see what we have to do in order to add the message event here as well. So as we have added the chat event at the server, we should also do the same in the client. So I'm going to say socket.on chat. It's going to get the data, like always, not date, it's data, and I'm going to set messages in the same way that I have done. So I'm going to set messages in a different way, because this is not a join message, this is an actual chat message. So I'm going to set messages, and I'm going to spread the previous messages same like I have done, but this time I'm going to say that the type is chat. So whenever I'm displaying a chat message, I'm going to display it in a different style. So the messages component will be handling that. So let me just add that also. So I'm going to say that, hey, this particular SID has sent this particular message. so that everyone that has connected with the server will be getting this message and knowing that who has actually sent the message. So let me go ahead and also build the input functionality so that users can actually type in something and click on something to send the message. So then we can see that in action. So I'm going to have an input tag here, and then I'm just gonna give it an ID of message and also an event, on change event. Let me just save that and say on change. Let me just put it as an anonymous function for now. Okay, and why is it not formatting like I want it to? Okay, I want it like this so that it will be clear to look at. So the on change event will be getting an event like always, and then we are going to take that event and we are going to extract the value from the event.target.value. And also I want to trim it because I don't want any white spaces around it. I'm just going to set the new state variable, which is going to be just message, not the messages list. So it will be a message comma set message, and the message when initialized will have an empty state, which means an empty string, and then come back down here and set the message to the value which we got here, value. Okay, so now that I have set the value, I have everything being updated in the message. So I have access to what the user has actually typed into the input box here. So once user types in, I want some kind of a button here so that the user can click on send. So I'm going to add a button, and the on click event will just going to be handling the socket.io part. It's just going to get the message variable and then read its content and then send it through the socket.io to that particular chat event that we have written in the sockets.py. So this is gonna get that, and then it will emit to the same event for all the clients to listen. So let me just fill this function. So I'm going to say if the message exists and the message is not empty, message.length only, then I'm going to emit to the chat and chat event the actual message variable. So whenever the user clicks on the button send, the on click event will be triggered and it will check whether the message is actually existing or not, and then the socket.io.emit function will emit the message to this particular chat endpoint. So once you have done that, the last thing that is left is to clear the message box. So once someone types in something here and clicks on send, you just need to clear this also. So to clear that, let me just get that by document.getElement, and the ID is a message because the input the ID we have given is the message. So I'm getting that particular input by ID, and then I'm going to set its value to an empty string. So I'm going to say message box dot value is equal to an empty string. Cool. And also let me clear the message state variable like this. Okay, now we have our button also ready, and let's see what's going on. So you can see that the the action is happening here. So if I just say this, and you can see that we are getting a bunch of undefined. Let's see and fix what is going wrong here. So we are getting the type as chat, but seems like we don't have the okay. I just need to say message.message, not chat. Okay, so we have the messages here. Cool. Let me just reload everything and test for one more time. So as you can see that let me just make these into two separate windows, look them side by side. So I'm just reloading this, and you can see that we can see the SID that this window has joined. And if I say hi from this window, you should see that this SID is saying hi, and you can see the same here also. And if I say hello, yep, you can see that this window is just said hello, and the other client also got that hello message. That's all for today, guys. I hope you have enjoyed it and learned something from it. If you did, please don't forget to like the video and make sure that you subscribe to the channel to not miss any content like this. The link to the source code will be in the description, and happy coding everyone. Bye bye.